On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, it's the three most exciting words in Toronto Raptors podcasting. It's what's more likely.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, February the 28th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the website that's terrible, at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's free to join, and we would love to see you in there. It's a great little community we got building around the show. It's friendly. It's nice. You get relationship advice. We talk about pizza toppings. It's all going on in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts on your favorite audio app of choice. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. All of those things are much appreciated when you partake in those things. And we are on YouTube. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the little notification bell, and get a push notification every single time the show is about to premiere, so you never miss the show. You can jump into the live chat and talk with all little sickos and freaks in there, just like you. Appreciate you being part of our sicko and freak horde here at Locked On Raptors HQ. All right, let's get to it. On today's show, we are digging in to another round of What's More Likely, our favorite parlor game here at Locked On Raptors. Before we do that, however, should tell you today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And we'll get started by bringing in the contestant for today's What's More Likely. Contestant? Participant? Well, I don't know. It's not really a game. It's just, or like, there's no like winning involved with it. There's just, you know, more varying degrees of right answers. Here to play the game is Katie Heindl from Dime and Basketball Feelings. Katie, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good, Sean.
It's always got to be like a lot in the morning for you to jump on here, 9 a.m., and I'm just screaming like a maniac into the microphone in front of you. I appreciate you being a good sport for it, Katie. It's much appreciated.
Scream more. This is pretty like, you know, this is more of just, this is routine.
It's like my wake up routine for me. Like I'm not a person until, you know, some people need their coffee. Some people need a shower. I need to just like do Muppet impersonations into the microphone for half an hour for me to really wake up and start my day. Drums, et cetera, et cetera. All right, Katie, we're playing What's More Likely. For those who are uninitiated, this is one of our favorite games here on the show. I take two equally unlikely extreme outcomes on far ends of one spectrum, and we determine which of those two extremely unlikely outcomes is the most likely of the two to actually take place in the world of your Toronto Raptors. And Katie, let's begin, shall we, with what's more likely number one for today. What's more likely, Katie? Scottie Barnes, who has fallen on hard times from three-point range of late after a rocket start to the season, knocking in threes from all over the place, 38% or better for a long stretch of the season. What's more likely? From here to the end of the year, Scottie Barnes shoots 38% or better from three, or 25% or worse. What you got? What's more likely?
I've realized this game makes me deeply uncomfortable as someone who is very analytical and kind of likes to understand, like, it's this is extremes, right? And the truth is always in the middle.
There's some sort of commentary to be done with this game. I'm not quite sure if I'm achieving it, but there for someone smarter.
Like it really does something to my brain and makes me uncomfortable. So thanks for getting me out of my comfort zone. I think for me, probably I'll go with the under on this one, because generally, you know, if this is his first slump of the season, that's pretty good. He made it pretty far. Shooting slumps do happen, and there's not that many games left. This is my thinking.
Hey, I think it's pretty decent thinking. So just to sort of break down the splits here, since December the 31st, so the day after the OG Anunoby trade, when the team began to fall into a state of flux, let's call it, Scottie Barnes shooting 27% from three-point range. He's at 32% on catch and shoots, 12.5% on pull-up threes, which, he's never been very good at pull-ups. Pull-ups are harder, but that's a kind of insanely low percentage on pull-up shots. That's 1.6 fewer attempts per game for Scottie in that time. He was shooting like 43% on catch and shoots prior to December the 31st over the, 30 or so games that they'd played before the OG Anunoby trade. And he was even at like 22% on pull-ups. There are more pull-ups just as like a proportion of his threes. Pull-ups are a higher proportion now too. And I'm with you. I think it's more likely he closes the season shooting less than 25% than he finishes shooting 38 or above. And mostly it's because of difficulty. There's no Pascal Siakam to create those very easy 3-point looks for him on the second side anymore. He's being asked to create a ton, and he's not being asked to put up threes with the same frequency that he did, because all of a sudden, Katie, look around. Gradey Dick's bombing threes. Kelly Olynyk's shooting threes. Ochai Abaji's hitting from the corners. They have actual guys who can fill in that 3-point volume. And so I guess my question to you, Katie, is if we both agree that Scottie Barnes has a better chance of kind of finishing the season shooting poorly from three than excellently, does that even have to be a bad thing with the way this team is currently set up?
No, and I didn't think of it that way. It wasn't, which is why I didn't sound like it was doom and gloom about it, because as you pointed out, there's a lot more people doing that now. And I think he's also shown that he can make up for that deficit elsewhere on the floor if he needs to. And it's been interesting to see, to be able to see what the construction of the team is, and to be able to see what, these new additions post deadline are capable of. You kind of have to seed some of that shooting, right? So whether this is a slump, whether this is a little bit by design, maybe, a mix of both things. Again, it's like not the worst time for it to happen. Granted, I forget who wrote this, which newsletter this was, but in this next stretch, just based on how badly the other teams that are like a little bit ahead of the Raptors are, there's now it feels like a renewed hope that they can make the play.
Oh, Katie, that's a tease for our last What's More Likely today.
So, I mean, then are you like, oh man, well, it would be pretty sweet if Scottie was also shooting the lights out. But again, I don't think it's like cause for alarm, because you've got, all these other guys doing it. So it's okay. I'll take it. Maybe he chooses to, get a little bit more improved on some of those other not as great metrics that you pointed out.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trading in, a couple of 3-pointers from Scottie Barnes for a whole boatload of Emmanuel Quickley above the break threes, working off of Scottie Barnes and more of a sort of big man facilitator role, I think you'll take that if you're the Raptors offense. That to me is a net positive. And, ultimately, Scottie Barnes will have to be something of a passable 3-point shooter to achieve whatever his ultimate ceiling is going to be. We saw it earlier this year when he was hitting at 39%. Teams were terrified and they were closing out on him, and Scottie Barnes attacking a closeout is an absolute monster. And so to unlock that part of his game, yeah, it'll have to come along. But right now, as he is adjusting to this new normal where he is now the guy, there is no one else to, there to help him as far as the sort of primary initiation goes. I think it's perfectly fine and totally understandable that his 3-point percentage has fallen off. He also looks pretty tired. Like he's carrying a lot for this team on both ends of the floor. You could forgive him if the legs aren't quite there on the 3-point shot right now either. Again, I'm not at all concerned. And I think ultimately with the way the rest of the team is shooting around him, I think you can totally get by with Scottie Barnes shooting under 25%. The beautiful thing about this game, Katie, though, is that he's probably going to shoot like 32%. That's just the way this game works, is we somehow end up in the middle, because I'm really good at setting these extremes. We'll come back on the other side, Katie, and get into a Gradey Dick-centric What's More Likely, as he has played some really fun ball, getting some recognition from, the larger basketball viewing community now that he's on this heater, and his role on next year's team, I think, is a pretty interesting spot for debate. We'll come and talk about that coming up in just 1 second here on the show. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, sometimes it's just nice to have someone to talk to, whether you're going through something traumatic or just going through a life change. Maybe you're trying to contemplate a career decision, or you want to have more TLC given to a relationship that's really important to you that maybe has fallen by the wayside, as life tends to cause, for all of us. Therapy can be something that allows you that outlet, somebody who is there to listen to you without an agenda, without any sort of preconceived notions or baggage. You just get to talk to that person about how you're feeling, and they can give you some solutions, coping mechanisms, ways to plot your track forward. It is an incredibly valuable thing. I know lots of people who have really benefited from therapy, and BetterHelp can be the place for you to give it a try. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams' ups and downs, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. You can even change therapists anytime if the fit's not right, for no additional charge. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show is also brought to you by Stitch Fix. Those who watch the show on video here know that I have 10 shirts that I wear on the podcast. It varies on the season. I have 10 winter shirts or sweaters. I have 10 summer shirts, and that's about it. It's because I hate shopping, and shopping is just not a thing I like to do. I don't like going into change rooms. I don't like, looking at myself in weird change room mirrors. It's not a good time for me. But with Stitch Fix, you can get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. I just give, your stylist, you give them your size, style, budget preferences, order boxes when you want and how you want. No subscription required, and they send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. Keep what works, send back the rest. It's that simple. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. If you don't like to shop, save that time, save that effort, save that money, and get Stitch Fix to go and do the shopping for you. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. Stitchfix.com/lockedon. Speaking of people who know about clothes, it's the inventor of shorts, the clothing, Katie Heindl from Diamond Basketball Feeling. Continuing on our What's More Likely. A quick side note here, Katie. It's pretty warm out there. It's going to get cold later today if you're listening to this on Wednesday in Southern Ontario specifically. I went outside today and I was thinking, should I wear some shorts?
John, it's February. Global warming. Look, I saw some people wearing shorts in Indianapolis. I understand people are wearing shorts. I was sweating yesterday when I took the dogs for a walk in the evening. Weird thunderstorm weather. I got to stick by the seasons, man.
That's totally fair. I will say I've become a full-time in the wintertime when I'm indoors shorts guy.
You can do whatever you want in your own home. You know?
That's beautiful. Thank you for the permission, Katie.
You're welcome. You can wear shorts nonstop in your own house.
I'm just gonna keep on as the world gets more hellish and warm at times. It shouldn't be warm, Katie. I'm gonna keep every year pushing is now the time for shorts earlier and earlier. Next year, February 15th.
Think how depressing it is when it's well, we have to. It's
yeah. There's no choice
outside.
But to wear shorts on January 18th.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right, Katie, let's get less depressed about the future and talk about Gradey Dick and his role on the Toronto Raptors. It's been really good for him of late. Absolutely scorching shooting splits over the last month or so. He's the 5th leading scorer on the team since the start of February, which is pretty awesome. 11.4 a game. He's just not missing from the corners. I think he's at 67% from the corners in that time as well. Just been awesome. And I think the sort of focus now is not just on the rest of this season, which we will talk about in the next segment, but what this team starts to take shape as going forward. We saw in the last game, Katie, some really great Scottie Barnes, Gradey Dick synergy. Just all sorts of different actions where you run those guys together and you make sweet, sweet basketball music out of it. And it's got me thinking, what is the plan for Gradey next year? Is he going to be someone who's a starter? Is he like just tossed in right away as a year 2 guy because of the fit, because of the shooting, because of what he's shown down the stretch? Do they go and make an addition in the summer that knocks him further down the depth chart so he comes off the bench? So Katie, what's more likely here? Katie, next season, I just broke it. Just totally short circuited. Katie, what's more likely? Katie, I'm good at my job. What's more likely? Gradey Dick starts all 82 games next season, or all the games he's healthy for, if you want to go that way, or starts 0 games next season for the Toronto Raptors. A couple extremes. Again, I'm sorry if this is hurting your brain, Katie, but what you got? What's more likely?
It's tough. Man. Well, it's not going to be 0.
Mm-hmm.
So logically, that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I got to go.
This game is not about logic, Katie. It's about hyperbole, extremes.
I know. Clearly,
I'm sorry I've made you squirm so much with this game.
What's the other option? He starts every game?
Starts every game he's available for.
Sure. It's got to be that one. I mean, truthfully, I think they will probably look at the roster and make some changes in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also, he was our pick. We've seen his development over the season. I think I've been pretty heartened by it, especially when he was asked to go to 905. There was like, I think this is like very bad, like journalism boosting, because I forget again who said this, but there was a pretty good story, or like just like a really insightful quote where he had said like, so, he was told at first he was maybe a little bit like, oh, is this like a demotion, but when he got there, he realized what a good opportunity it was going to be. The Raptors are also, as we've talked about before, not trying to treat the 905. That's like more of a pipeline again. So it's not a demotion. It's not like you're just getting sent down because you're not playing well. It's just there's other things. You want more minutes, and that's where he's going to get them. And look at what it's done to his abilities now. And I think just like the pressure he's able to take now in game versus at the beginning of the season where he looked a little bit lost sometimes on the floor. It's really night and day, which has been cool to see. So given all that, no, he's not the same kind of caliber player as Scottie Barnes, but we've also seen, how willing the franchise was to sort of hand over the reins, and not to just be like, some franchises are just like, no matter how good a first or second or third year player is, they're still going to be like, you don't get these minutes yet. You hit some invisible mark at like 4th or 5th year, which works for some teams, but is frankly, I think, like not a good way of developing anybody. And the Raptors have shown they're not really shy about, if like you play well, you develop, like you're going to get minutes. So I think all that bears out in that he will have far more starts next season.
I like it. I think I'm going to go the opposite way and say it's more likely he comes off the bench the entire season. But like, this doesn't have to be a bad thing. He can play 26 minutes off the bench and be a damn good player. I think, we don't know what's going to happen with Gary Trent Jr. If Gary Trent Jr. is around, that muddies what the plan is for Gradey Dick starting wise. I think he's obviously started down the stretch here, and that lineup is cooking teams basically every time it plays together with Gary Trent with the starters. And so maybe that compels them to keep him around and have him be the starter and just go into next year with some continuity with the same lineup that's had some really nice results here. And, admittedly a pretty small sample overall, but they have been absolutely roasting teams when they've been together. There's also, Katie, the possibility they go and add somebody in the summer, right? They have Bruce Brown's contract, which is out there, could very easily be moved at the draft. And I think the way they've set themselves up, as teams go through the playoffs and, there are going to be disappointments, and then there's going to be second apron concerns for a lot of teams. I think the Raptors are in a spot where they can, jump on a team that needs to cut some money and add a really good player, for, some draft capital or whatever it might be. And maybe that's a guy who, fills in that Gradey Dick spot where, maybe you pencil him in as the starting 2 guard, but maybe you get a wing who maybe moves RJ Barrett to the 2, and then you have a wing filling in that 3 spot and relegates Gradey Dick to the bench. I think there are enough likely possibilities here for the Raptors to add somebody or to retain Gary Trent Jr. that the pathway to starting next season for Gradey Dick is a little hard to see right now for me, but I would have no problem with it because that dude is fun to watch and really uplifts lineups he plays in because he is a wonderful mover and shooter and cutter and does all the little things that you want out of a starting basketball player in your fourth or fifth offensive spot. Where are you at with Gary Trent Jr. right now, Katie? I feel like this is like a constant sort of check-in with like a bunch of people I have on the show down the stretch here. He's been up, he's been down. He's actually flashed some kind of improved defense of late. Did a pretty damn good job on Tyrese Halliburton in the game where Halliburton looked off on Monday. I still don't know if I'm learning a whole lot about Gary Trent Jr. I feel like he's the guy that he's been for the last couple seasons, but he's been very effective and made those lineups really tick. Where are you at with Gary as far as like, will he be back next season or not? What's your sort of gut feeling without much in terms of like intel to go on? Unless you have some intel to go on, then by all means.
I mean, my gut feeling is more towards my hope is that I think, you know, he's a quiet person. He's a quiet player. And I think that can be difficult and a bit like detrimental even to your optics in the NBA, you know, and whether even like people think you're improving because, oh, wait, like you've actually got to watch him to realize he's improving and talk about improving. He talks about like kind of taking the assignments that he's been given, you know, and seeing those through. But given that, like, I hope he's around. I think he's like filled a lot of gaps when the team has really needed somebody like that. And he's done it, you know, like quietly, pretty unassumedly. He hasn't complained really. I think he's welcomed the more minutes and more responsibilities. As we know, it's not something that he had in the past in Portland, and it was something that he had talked. It was like the one thing he did talk about was like how much he was looking forward to being able to take on more of a role with the team. And I think he's done a good job. So it's like you know, we've talked about fan favorites before, and I think fan favorites are usually, you know, more of those gregarious, like louder players and personalities.
Guys who bark. Shadow JYD.
Didn't see him at All-Star, weirdly. This might be the first year I did it. Yeah.
Have you ever been barked at by JYD?
Yes.
Okay, me too. He barked at me on the phone, which was wild.
In an elevator, in a hotel lobby. After like interviewing him, just ending the interview. Yeah. Yep. And different like ways, you know, like different, not the same every time. Because if it was you know, in an elevator, that could be a lot. It's a small space, but it was like more subtle, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think Gary Trent Jr.'s like potential of being a fan favorite. I think just if he sticks around, he does really have that potential because it's like he'll have gone through several iterations of the team. He'll have developed as a player. And like, again, given the team something they really needed at times, which was shooting. He's, you know, you talked about his defensive improvements. Like that's been something that he's really, again, like stepped up for year over year. So I hope so. I mean, again, I see people, to me, the talk is a little bit baseless of him, of wanting to trade him, because again, I think a lot of that is just because he's not the flashiest or loudest player. He's still a really good, fundamentally like impactful person on the floor.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I think we saw this last year, right? Like he's going to be a free agent. I don't know how robust his market's going to be. And, you know, if the Raptors come in and get him on the mid-level exception or something like that, absolutely keep Gary Trent Jr. around. Like, I think it's kind of being painted a little bit as a, well, Gradey Dick's good now, so we don't need Gary Trent Jr., which is like my least favorite thing in basketball discourse, which is, oh, there's one good thing, get rid of the other good thing. Like, what if both good things were on the team? Like, you can't have enough shooting. And even if he transitions more to a bench role as Gradey Dick levels up and becomes, you know, the long-term starter that I think the Raptors picture him to be, that can be a perfectly fine player to have coming off your bench to maintain some of the stuff that the bench has been doing with Gradey Dick. Even though they're different players, the shooting's still there. And, you know, playing next to a Kelly Olynyk could be good for a guy like Gary Trent Jr. if the roles eventually flip between the two of them down the line. Either way, you are on the more likely he starts all the games. I'm more likely he starts fewer of the games. That's the disagreement you tune into a podcast for, baby. We're going to come back on the other side and get into our final what's more likely, which is all to do with that hot play-in race, baby. It's coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, rounding out the show here with Katie Heindl, talking what's more likely scenarios for your Toronto Raptors, both now and in the future. Just a heads up, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is Locked On's all-day streaming channel on YouTube, with Locked On shows covering all the biggest stories around the sports world, the national shows across the network, and of course the local shows covering the biggest stories with the local perspective you can only get from Locked On. Locked On Sports Today 24/7. Go subscribe, would you? All right, Katie, let's round it out here. The final what's more likely scenario to paint the picture. The Toronto Raptors right now sit 12th in the Eastern Conference, tied with the Brooklyn Nets, who stink out loud and are probably going to be passed by the Raptors anytime now. The Atlanta Hawks are without Trae Young. They've won 2 in a row without Trae Young. Interesting. The Chicago Bulls are not even that good. They are 27-31. They're 5 games ahead of the Toronto Raptors. And of course, the Raptors have won 3 straight. Going to be turning that into 10 straight, surely, with the way they're moving that ball so beautifully, right? So, Katie, the what's more likely scenario I have for you here is, what's more likely? The Toronto Raptors make it through the play-in tournament and into the playoffs proper to become food for the Boston Celtics in the first round, or they finish with a bottom 6 record and keep their draft pick. It's right now the sort of keeping the draft pick thing feels like it's maybe dying a little bit on the vine as the Grizzlies struggle and the Blazers continue to be very, very bad. The Nets are tumbling down, all of that. Where are you at? What's more likely here, Katie? The Raptors make it through the play-in or tumble back down into the range where they keep their draft pick? What you got? But
this is where I think they'll do both. They'll or they're not gonna, they'll make it into the play-in, but they're not gonna make it out of the play-in. So then they don't really get to do
that. Again, I'm setting the extremes at the perfect
I know I can't
spots here, Katie. I'm really good at my job.
I can't pick that. It doesn't feel likely to me that they'll make it out of the play-in.
That's fair. I mean, it's hard. They would have to beat the Chicago Bulls or the Hawks in a play-in game, which we know beating in the Bulls in the play-in, kind of a challenge for this team based on recent events. And then they would have to beat like one of the Pacers or the Magic, although beating the Pacers in the play-in would be absolutely delicious. And I don't think if you play the Pacers in a play-in game, you're feeling all that worried. They've actually matched up quite well, won 2 of the 3 and lost the third one by 2 points against them. Plus all of the subplots and the improving the Raptors draft pick by beating the Pacers and all that good stuff. This is the dream outcome for what's been a hell season to this point. But yeah, I'm actually going to say, call me the stupid, crazy, blind optimist. I do think it's more likely they make it out of the play and then fall into the bottom 6. I don't think they're going to fall into the bottom 6. The Grizzlies are 2-8 in their last 10. They are really injured. They are 2 games up on the Raptors now, or down on the Raptors, whatever it is, for that last 6 spot. And the Nets are terrible. They are totally directionless and lifeless. They don't seem like they want to be there. They've changed head coaches. The new guys on the team don't seem to like the head coach. That clip of Dennis Smith Jr. and Kevin Ollie, I think tells everything you need to know about the Brooklyn Nets' current state. And so the Raptors currently with the 7th best odds to keep their pick. I think they're going to finish at minimum at number 8 in the lottery standings. And hey, if they jump up and keep their pick, that's another wildly unlikely outcome that I've not accounted for here. I'm purely talking finishing bottom 6. I think it's more likely they go on a run here, catch the injured Hawks, get into the play-in, and just, you got to win 2 games. They've won 3 in a row, Katie. They've proven they can do it. They can string wins together now. Pizza parties for everybody. I think it's more likely they track down the Hawks and get through the play and then fall back to number 6. And it'll give all of the people who want to keep the pick an aneurysm. And I'm sorry to those people. How do you feel about the like, are you getting bought into the play-in race, the derby for that 10th spot? Like, it feels to me like a bit of low stakes fun down the stretch here to just, even if they don't make it, to have that carrot to shoot for.
Yeah. I mean, I said, off the top that I hadn't thought about it because I had put it so far out of my mind as an impossibility for this season. And then when I read that thing, I was like, oh, wait, like that's no longer just something that's like out of the realm of possibility. This is very possible given how everything is shaken out for, all these other floundering teams. So it would be fun. It would be really fun. As someone who also can say that the season completely crept up on her, like it's bizarre to me that it's almost over.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. It's almost March.
Yeah.
That's what happens when your first 50 games are under like a cloud of uncertainty where nothing feels like it matters.
Yeah, but to I guess to go through all of that to get to this team, which feels like this is the team that probably should have started the season. We know for like all the reasons why they did not. It would be nice to have a little bit of a fun extended run, especially like a bit of a flash on the pan postseason experience, like for some of these guys. So yeah, I think it's exciting. I think it's not a wild thing to root for.
For sure. I don't see how it's not a good thing for a young and growing team to have a third of a season
and coach.
And coach. Exactly. Finally, Darko's getting to instill his systems with a team that makes sense for his system. And lo and behold, the result's pretty damn good so far. Just looking at the comparative schedules for the Raptors and the Hawks down the stretch, the Hawks have the 13th toughest schedule in the league per tankathon. The Raptors 19th. The Hawks have 2 games against the Celtics, 1 against Minnesota, 1 against Denver, 1 against Cleveland, 1 against the Clippers, 1 against the Bucks as well. The Raptors, they've got no double ups against contenders. They got the Thunder, who they played well, the Wolves, who they beat on opening night, which was so long ago, Katie. My God, to your point of the season creeping up on you. Remember that? 97, 93, the defense looking great. Even.
Yeah. Feels like yesterday.
Yeah, they got the Nuggets, they got the Bucks, who they've had a pretty good time with as well this year. The Knicks, who are injured. Like, the tough games left for the Raptors are outnumbered by the tough games left for the Hawks for sure. And the Raptors also get 2 more against the Wizards, 1 more against the Blazers, 2 more against the Nets.
For the Hawks?
13th
That's
hardest,
like pretty hard.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. They do have
the first hardest. It's just like...
They do have both of their Blazers games left. 2 games against the Hornets, the Pistons, Grizzlies, and 2 against the Nets. So,
but struggle teams struggle most against other struggle teams. So
this is true.
That's like not like easy quote.
The Raptors have a lot of games against teams in that sort of like, like tonight, the Mavericks, the Warriors coming up, teams that are pretty decent, but also not like juggernauts or anything, and will simply not be prepared for the ball moving majesty of your new look Toronto Raptors, Katie. And also the Bulls have the 18th toughest schedule, right around where the Raptors are. Same remaining strength of schedule as far as win percentage for opponents. So we'll see. The Bulls are looking sad a little bit lately too. I don't think 5 games is doable. It's a lot to make up, but we shall see. Katie, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for hanging out. It's been a pleasure as always. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, the last of my All-Star interviews, content, whatever. Okay. I interviewed Miles Turner in Indianapolis over the weekend. It wasn't about All-Star, which is why, it could live this long not being written. That's on Dime. We talked about his leadership, kind of an uneasy leadership, things he had to really go through to become the longest tenured player on that team, how it kind of took him by surprise, and a lot of the work he does within the community. Miles Turner is someone I talked to, I think, for the last time in 2019. And when I mentioned that, we were both like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, just speaking of like time passing. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's like a very thoughtful person, really like matured a lot over the years. It's like such a pleasure to talk to. So you can write that on time.
Awesome. I know lots of Raptors fans are taking in that Pacers stuff as Pascal Siakam acolytes, or as
We talked
people
about
rooting for the
Pascal.
Pacers to lose
Yeah,
games.
we talked
for the
about
draft pick.
Pascal. He said he loves playing with Pascal. He makes his job a lot easier for him because everybody has to guard Pascal. So Miles Turner is free to kind of do what he wants.
Guy's pretty good. Guy's pretty good. And the fit with Miles Turner. A number of times on this show that I fantasized about the Raptors getting Miles Turner to pair with Pascal Siakam. I'm not sad.
You wished it, but it was the wrong. Yeah. It was one of those like, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, a little monkey's paw situation. We will leave it there, though. Thank you so much, Katie, for being here. Always the best of times talking to you. Always the best times playing What's More Likely, the game everybody can't get enough of course. So thanks so much to you, the listener, for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing, rating, reviewing, telling a friend, etc. And for going to the YouTube channel and supporting it over there as we push past 4,000 subs. Let's push towards 5, shall we? Let's get to 5K by the playoffs, which the Raptors will definitely be in, of course. Get on that play-in bandwagon, baby. Until then, though, we'll be back again tomorrow. We'll break down Raptors Mavs with our pal Jamar Heindl. We'll be back, and I'm going to try to get a guest for Friday to kind of do a bigger picture look at how things have gone for the Raptors since the very many changes and all that stuff. We'll do that ahead of the Warriors game Friday. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you Thursday. Until then, bye-bye.